Welcome to this demonstration of how to complete the reporting template for SDG Indicator 632, and this is specifically for Level 1 reporting. Firstly, I'll provide an overview of the Excel template that we use, and then I'll demonstrate each of the three ways that the template can be completed. This can be done at the national level, the RBD, or the reporting basin district level, and also at the water body level. It's important to note at this stage that the reporting template does not actually capture the water quality data, but only a summary of the classification process which has been applied by the country. In addition, we ask for certain pieces of information that help us to understand how the indicator score was generated. Pieces of information such as the number of monitoring stations, the number of monitoring values, and the target values that were used. Okay, so let's look at the template itself. The worksheets 1 to 3 are for information only. They provide a short description of the template. They also go through some terminology and explain some of the concepts which lie behind the template, and also a description of the fields, the cells which are used in the template. So if you're not sure about what type of data needs to be entered, you can always refer back to this sheet. The last worksheets at the other end, the grey ones, which are greyed out, these contain the code lists which are used to define the acceptable entries in certain parts of the worksheet. These again you don't have to worry about. These are for reference if needed, but in most cases you won't have to look at those at all. So the first one that you need to look at is the submission information, and here this is where you put in your information. So firstly you start with your country, and there's a drop down menu here and you can select which country you're completing the template for. Also just some information about yourself, your organisation, your name, your email address, and also here you can enter the year that you're entering data for. Now this is the second global data drive. The first one was in 2017, so you have the option here to retrospectively enter data for 2017 if you like. But in this case we are just going to stick to 2020. The final selection here that can be made is the reporting type. So this is the level at which you want to report. And just to mention them again, it's the national level, which is the most straightforward. You can then you can report at the reporting basin district level, or the most specific, the water body level. So I'm going to demonstrate each three methods, but just to say here now that based on your selection here, it has implications for some of the other worksheets. So for example, if you select the national level, the RBD, water quality, and the water body water quality data sheets are greyed out. So starting with the national level, once you select that reporting type, go on to that worksheet, and then based on your country that you entered, the country code is already entered there for you. The assessment period, that refers to the start of the period that you're entering data for. Now in this reporting period of 2020, we're asking countries to report data from between 2017 and 2019, so that 3-year period. Ideally it's data that spans those all 3 years, but it may be any data from any single year within that period as well. The next piece of information is to simply enter the number of assessed water bodies, and this is broken down by water body type, so the lakes, rivers or groundwater. And in this example we're going to use a very simple example with very few number of water bodies, just to make it clear for everyone to understand. So in this case, in our country, our fictional country, we're going to have 2 lake water bodies, 4 river and 2 groundwater. The next 3 columns are the proportion or the percentage of the assessed water bodies which actually came back with a good classification. So it came back as good water quality. And this is entered as a proportion, a percentage. So for our lakes, we'd say it's 50, and similarly for our rivers and groundwaters. So in real terms, of our 2 lakes that were classified, only 1 of them came back as good. And similarly for rivers, of our 4 rivers, 50% of them or 2 of them came back as good, and 1 of our groundwater bodies came out as good. The next 3 columns, we enter our monitoring locations. So in this case, we're going to say that for lakes, for our 2 lakes, there were 20 monitoring locations. For our rivers, there were 50. And for our groundwater, there were 10 monitoring locations that were spread across the water bodies. The next piece of information is the number of monitoring values. So how many actual data records are we using or did we use to reach our classification? So in this example, we're going to say 600 for the lakes, 1,200 for the rivers, and 90 for the groundwater. And as a general rule, the number of monitoring values should always be greater than the number of monitoring locations. And similarly, the number of monitoring locations should always be greater than or equal to the number of water bodies. So that means that for each water body, you have at least 1 monitoring station, and for each monitoring station, you should have more monitoring values. And the number of monitoring values, that's not just the monitoring event, but for example, if you've monitored for all 5 core parameters, if you've monitored just once, you're going to have at least 5 monitoring values per monitoring location. And the last 3 columns are simply just to give information on the number of core parameters that were used in the classification. So for surface waters, the maximum is 5, the 5 core parameters. And for groundwater, the maximum number is 3. So we're going to say in this example that we used the maximum number of core parameters. So for those who are looking to complete this template with just using the national level, once this is completed, the only other worksheet that needs attention is the water quality targets. And on this one, this is where you specify the target values that you used to classify your measured values of your water quality. These are the numerical values that you compared your measured values to. Now these are, in this instance, there is a facility to specify either RBD or water body specific target values, but in this example we're just going to stick to the national target values. So to complete this worksheet, you simply specify for which water body type that you're completing the data for, so either lake, river or groundwater, and then you enter the parameter code, and this again is another drop down list, so you can select which of the parameter codes, and based on your parameter code you have a list of unit codes. So these are the units which you used in your for your analysis. So in this case we're going to use microsiemens per centimetre. The target type refers to whether it was a lower limit, an upper or a range, and this depends on the type of parameter that you're measuring. For example, pH is often used as a range, so good ambient water quality normally falls between an upper and a lower limit. Nutrients are often listed with an upper limit. For example, for a nitrate, you wouldn't want your measured values to be above a certain limit. So this column here allows you to specify that. So in this case, we'll say for electrical conductivity, we had an upper limit, and as soon as we select that, the lower limit is grayed out, and then we can type in whichever upper target value that we used. So in this case, we're going to specify 500 microsiemens per centimetre for electrical conductivity. So that's the first one. Then that has to be repeated for the other parameters. So for example, if we look at pH and we enter the units, and this time we will apply a range rather than an upper. You can see neither of these columns is grayed out, and then we just type in the lower and the upper target values that we applied to our pH data. This needs then to be repeated for each of the other parameters and the water body types. So to give an example of a nutrient, if for example we were using total phosphorus, we may have used the units of micrograms of phosphorus per litre, and this was an upper limit, and a value that we may have used would be, for example, 10 micrograms of phosphorus per litre. So the rest of these rows are completed in a similar way. So we'd complete that for nitrogen. Again, being careful to make sure that we select the correct units that we actually used, and to be careful that we either selecting the nitrogen, or in some cases if we use nitrate and recorded our results as nitrate rather than nitrate nitrogen, we have to be very careful at this stage that we enter those correctly. And our last core parameter is dissolved oxygen, and in this case we recommend using percentage saturation. And for dissolved oxygen, it's usually a lower limit, that we don't want our measured values to fall below a certain value, but you can also use a range as well. In some instances the water may become supersaturated for one reason or another. So this process is just repeated for your other water body types. So for example, if you entered your river information and also your groundwater information, if you had them, you just complete those using the same method. And then when that's complete, if you're just reporting at the national level, then your submission is done. You can save the Excel template and then send it into the help desk, and that is complete. If, however, you are reporting at a finer resolution, for example, the reporting basin districts or the water body level, I'll work through exactly how to do that now. The reporting template also allows you to submit at the sub-national scale, at the reporting basin district or at the water body level. And this is done on the submission information worksheet. And it's row 7, so you can just click in there, and rather than the national, you just change your selection to reporting basin district or water body. So we'll work through the steps of the reporting basin district first. As soon as that cell is selected, the RBD water quality worksheet is no longer greyed out, and you can enter your information into this worksheet. In this example, we are pretending that there are two RBDs, and we've just named them A and B, just for the purposes of this example. So the code is a unique identifier by which to identify that particular RBD. The second column is the name, the third column the area, and the fourth gives you the opportunity to specify whether it's a transboundary reporting basin district or not. If you do select yes, then you can select here from a list predefined transboundary river basins which one it falls into. If your particular one isn't in that list, you can just type in the name and ignore any warning messages that come up. The next two columns are just the assessment period. So from which period are the data that you're using being which years. So it's 2017 to 2019, the same as in the previous example. And then the information is the same as which was captured before, but just at a different spatial scale. So this may be relevant if, for example, one particular reporting basin district is more monitoring data, is more active. It may be more relevant than another one. There may only be monitoring going on in one reporting basin district, and it may not be national. So this sheet gives you the opportunity to report that information. So it's the same as before. It's the number of assessed water bodies, the proportion of those which meet the good classification, and then you simply fill in the number of monitoring stations, the number of monitoring values, and the number of core parameters, core parameter groups that were the data from which were used to generate the indicator score. So that's exactly the same, but you just have two lines. So in this case, rather than just the one for the national, you have two, one for each reporting basin district that you're reporting on. Once that's complete, you can then go to the water quality targets worksheet, and then again you follow a similar process as before. But here now, in the first column, you can specify whether you're setting specific reporting basin district targets. So in this case, we'll say, yes, we are. And then you can enter your code. And then for that particular reporting basin district, then you can complete the same information as you did before. So whether it's a lake, a river, a groundwater, and you fill in exactly the information the same as which was done before. If you're reporting at the finest spatial scale, which is the water body, so back onto the submission information worksheet, you select water body, and now the water body water quality worksheet is not greyed out anymore, but you can also fill in some information still on the reporting basin district. Because of the nested nature of all the water bodies are nested within a reporting basin district, you still have to fill in this level, this spatial level, before you can fill in the water body level. So if we for this purposes of this example, if we leave those the same and then go to our water body water quality worksheet, when we look to the first column, we have in there already pre-populated the choice based on our reporting basin districts information that we filled in on the previous worksheet. So in this case, we fill in the first one. We may have a specific code for a unique identifier for that particular water body. and then the rest is the same as before. So we fill in our water body name, and then the rest of the information is the same as what we filled in before. So this is then just repeated for each of our water bodies that we want to work with. So in our case, we were working with 2 reporting basin districts. And we can just add the information exactly the same as we did before, but just making sure to specify the water body type, and for lake and groundwater bodies we fill in an area, and for river water bodies we fill in a length in kilometres. You also have the opportunity to specify whether the water body is artificial or not, and whether it's transboundary or not. There's a slight difference on this worksheet in that the quality status is for that particular water body is we use a binary system, either yes, it's good water quality where you enter a 1, or if it didn't make the good water quality classification, then you give it a 0. And then the other columns are the same. You enter the number of monitoring locations, the number of monitoring values, and the number of monitoring the core parameter groups that we use to generate the classification. When that's complete, the last worksheet that needs attention is the water quality targets worksheet. And this is again gives you the flexibility to specify whether if you use national targets. So did you specify targets which were relevant for all water bodies of a particular type across the whole country? Or were there certain water bodies where you were more specific and used a different target value? This may be relevant, for example, if for a particular river, an upland region may naturally have different water quality to a downstream section of the river, so you'd adjust your target values accordingly to better reflect the natural baseline conditions of the upland compared to the lowland river section. So this worksheet gives you the flexibility to report that information. So in this example, just to elaborate slightly, so here for the first few rows are your these target values apply to all of the other water bodies except for this particular water body where you may have specified different target values, which may be more stringent or less stringent than the national target values that you've applied. So that's it. Once that information is complete, the submission can be then saved and sent into the help desk. If you do have any queries on anything raised during this demonstration, then please don't hesitate to contact us. Thanks very much.